Tired of the everyday routine? Does the bustle of the city ever get you down? In weakness and under stress, you might find yourself thinking, I've played Stardew Valley. I bet I could move to the countryside and run a farm and raise a family. It sounds tempting sometimes. It's quiet, unassuming. You usually quickly realize this is a horrible idea and that sending an email for work in an office job isn't that bad after all. What if I told you there are a fair amount of people who've actually embraced that lifestyle, but embraced it in a way that resembles the life of an 1800s era homesteader? And that this seemingly innocent way to live-action roleplay a bygone era has become a nefarious political project to undermine feminism and women's rights, all in favor of creating a culture promoting having a massive family? My name is June Sternbach.
My name is Josh Borman.
This is Ill-Conceived, a podcast about natalism. Hey, Josh.
Hey.
Hey, what's up? How's it going today? How have you been?
Pretty well. I actually, I don't know if you saw the pictures. I saw Nine Inch Nails last night.
I know too many people that have been seeing Nine Inch Nails recently. Haven't they? Like they brought the Cube to their shows, right?
Yes, they have the goth Kaaba, as I would call it. Basically, the set that they have for the show. There's the main stage, and when they're on that main stage, they are mostly playing the older stuff, like particularly from the Downward Spiral era.
Okay.
But then they've also built this second platform, sort of out in the middle of the floor. And it's surrounded by curtains on all sides before the show starts. And it's black, so it really does look like the Kaaba.
It does.
And then the curtains eventually go down into the base, and then it was so good, June. I've seen a fair bit of live music in my time. This is easily a top 5 concert in my life.
That's incredible. Can I admit something to you?
You can.
I've never really been a Nine Inch Nails person.
That surprises me.
Yeah, I love music, but that's just like a band that I don't know what it was. I forget who I was talking to recently. Like I said, I know like 4 people that went to, like, there was a couple of people I know that went to the Chicago show. Mm-hmm. So I've just been talking about Nine Inch Nails and how it just was like out of reach for like when I was like a kid.
It's just
like
too angry, or like
it just wasn't the zeitgeist when I was like a teen anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Or something like
that's
that.
True.
See, yeah, I'm 29. I'm just a little bit younger, and it was just like a little bit before my time, I think.
But I feel like everything 90s is back in a big way now, so it makes sense that Nine Inch Nails is also back. But this is, of course, not a Nine Inch Nails fan podcast, as much as it may have sounded like it.
It could be. We could do that maybe one day.
It would be a strange pivot, given that you don't care about them very much.
Look, sometimes you have to have like the audience surrogate. Someone needs to be the like, wow, what does that mean?
Absolutely.
Type character, yeah.
What's been going on in your life, Jim?
My legs are tired. I helped my partner move recently, and oh my fucking God, I went up. So you know how the health app on iPhones keeps tracks of like steps and stairs.
How many flights of stairs you've been up? Yeah,
98 flights of stairs up and down. Of course, not all up.
Oh God, did she move to a walk up?
From a walk up to a higher walk up.
No,
it was brutal. It was fucking brutal. But then I found out Brian Quinby, Murder Brian, does that like for his normal exercise. He posted in my replies that he walks normally. I think he just broke his record of 332 steps in a day.
Steps or stairwells?
Stairwells, like, staircases, like stairs,
like flights.
Flights. He walked 3 9/11s, 3 Twin Towers.
Well, I would walk 3 9/11s, and I would walk 3 9/11s more.
So it's a great way to work out, is what I found out. It's a whole culture going up and down flights.
So what I'm hearing is that you might also be in the process of becoming a stair guy.
Look, maybe he knows all about guys. He's a guy connoisseur. I have to trust his guy knowledge. He is a stair guy, so maybe I'll engage.
Join the tribe. Well, we have gotten something on our newswire This is the ill-conceived Newswire, our brand new segment.
World famous brand new segment.
World famous brand new segment. It's almost as famous as the mailbag. It's getting there. We've had numerous people tag us in on something that got leaked to the Washington Post. And I'm sure you saw this, right, June?
I woke up and I saw you sent me a text about it. And then I didn't open the text, but I opened Blue Sky and saw your post about it. So I was like, that's absolutely what he texted me was that post. Yeah. So it was posted by the Washington Post. The headline reads, "The group behind Project 2025, which we know on this show, of course, is the Heritage Foundation.
Of course.
Wants a Manhattan Project for more babies." And the subheader reads, "A draft position paper from the Heritage Foundation proposes massive revisions to the U.S. economy policy to encourage heterosexual married couples to have more children." Which, like, so just for context for listeners here, sort of the almost the entire reason this show started was because of Josh and I coming together and sort of writing an economic hypothesis that this was what the right wanted to do to the United States.
That this is, the core materialist, not been like, well, they want natalism because like they're freaks and they have brains of goo. No, it's like they are seeking to reorder the economy around large nuclear white families.
Yeah. No, they want to basically what I haven't read. I haven't read this entire article. I don't know if there is like an outline of this piece quite yet. I don't know if you could enlighten me on that specifically.
I mean, what I saw is that I think that this paper, it's a draft, right? So it's not done yet.
Right.
But I think that whoever leaked it was sort of more on the like free market whatever side of the Heritage Foundation and doesn't like these cultural conservatives, and so leaked it to the Post. And the fact that the Post published it is really interesting too, because obviously the Washington Post in recent months has become a more explicitly ideological newspaper. Like Jeff Bezos has been making moves in that direction. So the fact that what is becoming a very conservative newspaper would still have this sort of as their leading thing, and the fact that Heritage would want to do outreach to the Post, I think also speaks to sort of where we are right now with the media. I'm sure we'll do some sort of thing about this at some point sooner than later, but we did just want to acknowledge that is like the big news, and also just to say, nailed it.
We did kind of call this like 6 months ago.
Not to flex, but like we called that shot. Well, June, do you want to now dig into the mailbag?
Absolutely.
I feel like we might as well.
Let's dig in. Let's pull out a few letters.
So every week we love to dig into our mailbag, take a look at some things that you, the listeners, have sent in. You listening to this right now, you too can have your letter read on our show. Just send an email to illconceivedpod@gmail.com with your thoughts about the show, or how things about your life, sort of connect with what we've been talking to. So I'm going to start with this one. This is from Blukey, who says,
Hi, Blukey.
Hey, Blukey. When I was 19, I volunteered with my church's middle school youth group. For the annual sex talk, an organization called Boyfriend Bears did a presentation for the girls. The boys were told not to masturbate or watch porn, and then they played basketball in the parking lot for the rest of the night. It was all the usual purity culture stuff, most of it courtesy of Dana Gresh, who was a major voice in the sexual purity movement in the early 2000s and 2010s. I know June likes lists, so...
Oh, I love them.
Here's one from Wikipedia covering some of Gresh's teachings. Abstinence is the only form of HPV prevention which is 100% effective. A person can get addicted and bonded to the people they have sex with. When a virgin woman's hymen breaks during intercourse, it forms a blood covenant between the woman, her husband, and God.
A blood covenant.
A blood covenant.
Oh, God.
Immodest dress is sinful, causing men and boys to stumble. Focusing on Jesus helps overcome PMS symptoms.
Come on.
By submitting to authority, women earn God's protective covering. A woman's value comes from fulfilling her designated role as a wife and mother. Greater connection to God will stop the desire to masturbate. Women should save every part of their heart and body for their future husband because sex before marriage is a sin.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the end of the presentation, instead of purity rings, everyone got a stuffed white bear with a little pocket in its back to stick a note. The idea was that on the night of your wedding to a Christian man, you'd give your husband the bear, and he'd read the note.
Oh, come on.
Now, for context, I am asexual. I'd only recently figured this out at the time, but I'd accepted it. Still, I was a bit frustrated with how the presenters talked about sex and sexual desire like they were both inevitable. So, for my note, I wrote, if I ever have a boyfriend, I promise to wait and wait and wait. I'll keep waiting even if we get married. It's never going to happen. I'm asexual. Deal with it.
Got his fake ass.
Over the next few months, I kept wondering if asexuality counted as a sin. I knew it was a queer identity, but it wasn't one I'd ever heard about at church. I couldn't think of any reasons why it should be sinful. Like, if anything, it seemed like a blessing because I was immune to a major source of temptation that everyone else seemed to experience.
Right.
And the thing was, I still liked the idea of getting married someday and spending the rest of my life with someone I loved. But with all that talk about how important sex was, I was unsure if it was even possible to love someone properly without having sex with them. I finally worked up the courage to ask my youth pastor. I was hopeful at first because he said that the lack of sexual attraction is a gift since you're free from distraction. But then he continued saying that asexual people shouldn't get married or date or anything because they'd be cruel for depriving their spouse of sex.
Oh, cruel.
He said this applied even if the spouse agreed to a sexless marriage because sex is a necessary part of physical and emotional bonding between married couples. The more he talked, the more I felt like maybe I was cursed instead of blessed. After that conversation, I resolved never to date or get married because I was terrified I'd hurt someone I loved about by not wanting to have sex with them. In an ironic turn of events, a few years later, I married my youth pastor's younger brother. We've been together nearly 10 years now, and guess what? Our marriage is happy, healthy, and joyful, and sexless. Oops, turns out you don't need to have sex with someone in order to have a healthy relationship. In fact, it seems that when you both stop trying to force yourselves into boxes prescribed to you by a controlling religion, it makes life in general a whole lot easier.
Absolutely.
Also, I still have that bear in case you were wondering, and they attached photos of the bear.
Aw.
By the time I got married, I wasn't a Christian or a woman, so I guess it was wasted on me. Anyway, love the podcast. Your theme song absolutely slaps.
Thank you so much. That's an incredible letter. What was it? The something bears?
The boyfriend bears.
The boyfriend bears is crazy.
Also, boyfriend bears to me sounds like
gay. That's
it
like
sounds
a gay
so
thing.
gay, right?
Yeah. I thought that this was going to be like a gay guy thing.
Yeah, it's like,
at first.
yeah, no, I spent my weekend up in Boys Town hanging out with the boyfriend bears.
Yeah, like that's a bar downtown somewhere. Yeah. No, that's fucking the blood covenant. I have never heard that before. Like, I know religions and like evangelicals, and especially like something we haven't really talked too much in the show at all. Like Islam sort of has that belief about like virginity and like purity and like sex and like the first time someone has sex. But that I have not heard that in like a Christian religion in the same way.
It's, really weird.
Yeah.
Really, really weird. Here's another one. This is from an anonymous listener who says, "Hello, Josh and June. Although I've been aware of James Dobson for many years, I never read his parenting advice and figured I didn't need to, as many queer friends had written the entire project off as focus on your own fucking family, and I didn't feel the need to engage the material. I believe it was Josh who described the process of disciplining a child according to James Dobson in a recent episode. As uncomfortable as that must have been to read, I wanted to thank you for doing so, because it follows an exact blueprint of the experiences I had with a caregiver growing up. It felt so scripted to me in my memory, and confirming that it was indeed a script, courtesy of that caregiver's born-again experience in the 1990s, meant I had context for what had happened. It wasn't my fault. Thanks again. Keep up the amazing work." Thank you for writing that. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you obviously had that experience. That is painful and bad, but I'm glad that now you have a framing for it that allows you to understand why. Because I think that, especially when you're a kid, it's like it feels so senseless. But like you said, also you intuited that there was a script to it, and now you were able to put those pieces together. And I'm glad we were able to help with that.
Yeah. And like, I'm glad I'm learning so much more about stuff like that, because I think it's really important to, I think there's always a lot of hesitation to just like not research or like look into like the reactionary ideology beyond just like reacting to what we see them do. And I feel like it can help build a deeper context for just like countering stuff like that sometimes. So
no, I think you're right. There's definitely a tendency among a certain type of person on the left to be like, oh, look at these big dipshits,
which is so fun. I love doing that.
It's fun, but also you underestimate them at your own peril, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got a third and last email that I'm going to read for our mailbag before we get started with the main episode. This is another anonymous listener who says, Dear Josh and June, really enjoyed your episode on purity balls and daddy-daughter dates. I wanted to weigh in on one thing you mentioned, which was being unsure how common the practice still is. I can't speak for elsewhere, but purity balls are alive and well in rural Georgia in 2025. I grew up with them as an integral part of local evangelical culture, with multiple churches I attended in my childhood hosting, supporting, or participating in purity balls for dads and their daughters. One of these churches, which was also a school which I attended, had all the 7th grade girls get married to Jesus. Of course, purity rings and pledges were quite prevalent. As a man, I dodged this particular torment, but we received our own breed of traumatic abstinence-only hetero-exclusive Jesus is watching you jack off education, born of the mind of such geniuses as Fred Stoker. Fred Stoker, by the way, is a fucking freak. I'm not sure that I don't think he'd really be somebody who we'd talk about on this show, but I've talked about him on my other show, and his whole thing is that, like, the moment that he sees a jogger with, like, big bouncing boobies, he gets so overcome with lust that he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Oh, what the fuck? What? Who is this guy? Is he like a priest? Who is he?
He is a Christian, an evangelical Christian influencer, I guess you could say, or he was at least in the 90s. He's not so popular anymore, but he basically wrote this book called Every Young Man's Battle, and it's all about how the moment that you are tempted to, like, check out a hot babe, you need to bounce your eyes away from her. And he writes in this book about how, like, he will be driving down the road and he'll see a jogger with big naturals on the side of the road, and he will just look in completely the opposite direction away from the traffic in front of him. And he'll be like, I haven't gotten in a crash so far.
He acts explicitly, like, weirder about, like, not looking at her.
He's so weird.
What a weirdo.
Anyway, that's your Fred Stoker minute.
Oh my God.
My brother recently became a father of a baby girl, and he has already expressed his excitement for daddy-daughter dates and purity balls. She's less than 1 year old.
That's so odd.
I'll add that his motivation is, in my opinion, completely earnest, with nothing but love in his heart for his daughter. This is simply what is done if you were raised like us. In his mind, to do anything else would be failing to care for his daughter properly. But love as a motivation doesn't stop the cycle from doing the same damage.
And that's the thing is, like, I feel like a lot of the people that engage with, like, purity balls and all of this thing, and maybe even a lot of things that we talk about, is that there's not, like, a necessary evil intent behind a lot of it. It's just, like, the culture of perpetuating the types of, like, right-wing ideology that they do is what the problem is. There is not an evil behind your, like, any person's heart, of course, except for maybe the people that write these ideologies and like start them.
I think there's plenty of evil in James Dobson's heart specifically,
absolutely.
But you're exactly right. When you're talking about the average person, they are just replicating patterns of behavior that they experienced and observed in their own lives.
Yeah, and I guess it maybe is just that they need to, I don't know if you feel comfortable enough to, like, be like, hey, like, I would maybe feel comfortable doing something like this where you'd be like, hey, that's kind of a weird thing to just, like, already want to do with your 1-year-old daughter. But, like, I don't know, maybe that's what it takes to sort of break that behavior pattern.
It's hard, right?
It is hard, is the thing. Like, I don't want to tell people how to, like, interact with their family.
And you certainly don't want to be, for it to feel like, you know, you're questioning your brother's love for his kid, you know?
Of course, because it's not that. I'm sure he does love her.
Right. But yeah, it's like, what is a better way forward? What are ways that you can raise your kids that aren't going to instill these bizarre, like, complexes in them that they could otherwise just avoid completely?
Maybe just get them into really cool music, like Nine Inch Nails.
Take your baby to the
old.
9 Inch Nails show. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a way better upbringing.
There's one. They're going to be in Atlanta in a few days. So, like, you know.
There's still time.
There's still
Georgia.
time. There's still time. Well, that's been the mailbag for Friday, September 5. Again, send us your emails about this or other episodes. Let us know what you're thinking, and we might read your letter on the show. illconceivedpod@gmail.com. June, you ready to get started?
I am so ready to talk about Tradwives.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what the fuck is a Tradwife?
I've been asking this.
Yeah. And, I feel like intuitively we all kind of know what it is. It's like a newer thing. Tradwives have not really been a thing in the wider culture up until kind of recently. But I feel like no one truly knows, and like me included, up until like doing research for this episode, like just the like origins of it, the underpinning, the ideology there, like what the hell is happening in this sphere.
So before you started doing your research for this, if I were to ask you what is a Tradwife, what would you have said?
I probably would have said something to the effect of, they are people that live a very traditional life for content creation purposes. They make food from scratch. They might have like a general right-wing politics to them that is not like on display. That's probably the extent of what I would have said if I had to guess.
A lot of cast iron stoves and things of that nature.
Yeah, and of course, like the true definition that I would say now is very similar. That's like kind of just the intro to it. I feel like when I first found like Tradwife, I don't know if you have like a very similar like first time you saw Tradwife content, but I know for a fact the first time I saw something I would explicitly be like, oh, this is like Tradwife content, was her name is Nara Smith. She is that Mormon woman who creates like food. She's like a food creator on TikTok, makes a lot of food from scratch. She's made famously, I think she blew up one time on Twitter in particular, making Cinnamon Toast Crunch from scratch.
Today my toddlers wanted cereal for breakfast again, so I decided to make some Cinnamon Toast Crunch since that's my husband's favorite cereal and the kids have never had it. So I combine all of my dry ingredients into a bowl, give that a really good mix, and then slowly add some oil and water. I incorporate everything with my spatula and then move on to using my hands. Then I add in the cinnamon and make sure it's incorporated before putting my dough on some parchment paper. I use another sheet of parchment paper on top and roll it out as thin as I can. Once it's rolled out, I'm using a pizza cutter to just cut it into squares or rectangles. You can do it in whatever shape you want. I ended up making 2 batches, sprinkled it with some sweetener. You can use sugar. I used monk fruit sweetener. I put it on my parchment paper and baked it in the oven at 350 for about 10 minutes before I turned it down to 250 and baked it for another 35. I pulled it out the oven, let it cool, and then broke the squares apart before adding them to bowls with some milk. And this is now a favorite in our house.
And she's dressed like very decadently, very over the top, very traditional, very feminine. And I think that was like probably my first exposure to what I would call Tradwife, the Tradwife movement.
Okay.
I don't know if you have a similar like thing where you're like, oh, this is like Tradwife content.
Well, there was the one that I think texted you. There's that girl on TikTok who does
Estee, I believe her name is.
Estee, maybe. Yeah. Blonde girl. And her whole thing is, it's hard to say to what extent this is the intention behind it, but the, I think, net rhetorical effect is this sense of like, okay, this is like OnlyFans content, but it's safe for work, where you're fantasizing about like having a hot trad wife who's blonde and wears like traditional dresses and has big boobs.
The husband is hunting, so I'm gonna get ready for our date night for when he comes home.
So here's to hoping that these rollers come out okay. I think I left them in for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Okay, so all brushed out and parted. I like it. So now the outfit.
So my dress is unique vintage, barely fits me. Their sizing chart was really funny for this dress. And I'm wearing a shawl to keep my arms warm. It came with a little cute belt to suck it in. And now shoes. For shoes, I'm wearing these Miss W shoes. Just kidding.
Yeah, very like frilly, very, very feminine.
And also very, like, I'm here to support you, my good husband. I'll do whatever it is that you want from me.
Oh, and would you be surprised that that's sort of like the underpinning of the whole like cultural ideology of Tradwives is the...
No, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, that's like on every level. That is everything. That is the underpinning ideology. That is the nefarious aspect of this whole thing. Whether it be intentional or not, because I'm sure there's content creators out there. I don't know about her, the one you were talking about. I think her name is Estee.
Yeah.
But like, I'm sure there's people that like, it's like cottagecore aesthetic. There's nothing necessarily nefarious about liking the cottagecore aesthetic and maybe like posting on Pinterest like, oh, wow, I like this overall aesthetic.
I think there's something specific that happens when it's something like that account where the camera is the object of the performer's attention.
Yeah.
And it's being like looking into the camera and being like, hey, baby, how's it going? You're such a great husband of mine. Right? Like, it's trying to instill a specific reaction, I think.
That's the very strange thing about the Tradwife movement is it's sort of a product of social media. It wasn't really a thing before like TikTok and Reels. It's a very new thing that is very explicitly like about it's all aestheticism.
Yeah.
At the bare basics of it is all about aesthetics and all about leaning into the man, leaning into like the male gaze, if you will.
Yes, very much. Yeah, that's the thing that I was trying to express earlier is like you can very much tell when it is being created for men based on whether or not it indulges the male gaze. Because there's plenty of content too that's just like, wow, look at my great kids, look at my kitchen, look at even honestly like look at my cute frilly dresses. You can tell who the intended audience is.
And that's the weird thing is because there are people like that where it's like, oh, the intended audience is definitely men. But there is a big aspect of this that is targeted to and really enjoyed by women as well. So it's a very interesting crossroads of content that appeals to a lot of people, sadly. And I think the thing that appeals to specifically women in the creation of this sort of content and ideology is that it promises a simpler life at home. Like, working, it's kind of tough sometimes. It's stressful. Like, wouldn't it be easier from like these people's perspectives? Wouldn't it be easier to just like stay at home, have a wonderful providing husband, make all the money, and you just raise kids? Like, that sounds wonderful.
Well, and it's like you were saying in the intro, right? It's like the Stardew Valley dream. You can really control your own life in a way that is not possible under wage labor.
It portrays a different sense of freedom that having a job does. And I think sometimes that can be appealing. And, I've had that thought too. That's why I wrote that intros. I've had that like, oh, it'd be fun to like live on a farm.
Yeah, mine is like going up and living in a cabin in Vermont or whatever, right? It's like, and then just like ski during the winter. It holds a certain appeal.
It does. But before we get too deep into like pinning down the exact working pieces of Tradwifeism. I think
Tradwifery?
Tradwifeism. I think it's still up in the air.
I'm going to say Tradwifery because I like the ring to it.
You know what? We're starting that here today.
Let's go.
We're coining it, Tradwifery. Let's talk about the like origins of this movement because, like I said, it's fairly recent. The person that was attributed to starting the like modern Tradwife movement as we know it. Her name is Alena Kate Pettit, I believe is how you pronounce her name. She's a British writer, former content creator, who began all of this. She was a blogger. She wrote her perspective about like homesteading, being a homemaker, raising kids, and like looking at some of her text and just like how she acted in a lot of interviews. She was very apolitical about it. It was like from her perspective, it was genuinely just about her living her life in the way that she wanted to. The part that was like slightly political, she called herself apolitical, but of course there is always politics to all of this.
If you say you're apolitical, you're lying. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like people who are actually apolitical will be like, I'm basically like broadly in the center. Like I think like some people have really good points and I listen to Joe Rogan sometimes. Like that's an apolitical person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think people who say they're socially liberal, economically conservative. That's like the average apolitical person in the United States. Yeah. She would always describe herself as apolitical, but she didn't really ideologically feel like feminism was for her. She didn't really want a career. She didn't really want to have like a home, like live independently of like a man. She really liked cooking, homemaking, wanted to raise a big family.
And so for her, feminism, she specifically meant like second wave feminism. Like women can do it all too. Women can do just as well as the men and should be given equal opportunity in the workplace kind of shit.
I just hate the idea that we've allowed this culture and this mentality of rat race to take the magic out of that period of time, which we're only going to get. Some of us, unfortunately, never get it. But when we do, it's far too fleeting. And what are you going to look back on? Oh, yeah, I wanted to get back to work. I don't know. It doesn't compute for me. I know women are all different in terms of their mindsets and, if they want a career. But this is one very good reason as to why we will never be equal with men. Because equal means exactly the same. And our ability to birth babies and be mothers and nurture them is different to what men provide. It's both equally important, but the approach is completely different. We are not equal to men, and we shouldn't try. We should have equal opportunities and equal, equal chances, equal access to education, equal rights,
respect,
and all that kind of stuff.
I think, as well. Yeah.
But I just feel like it almost goes back to that podcast you did before about the erasure of women. Like, our role is being stolen from us, and we are just being turned into these like Autobots.
And she started posting on Instagram about this eventually, and she started to really take off. It started like trending on Instagram. A lot more people started finding like, oh, TradWife. She coined that sort of style of content. But as time went on, she found herself portraying a sense of femininity that she like just wouldn't portray. Like at first, I think in an interview she says she would just wear jeans and like a t-shirt, but then once in a while she would post a photo of herself on her like at her home in like a dress and like nicely done hair, and that would do a lot better in the algorithm. And she started to get thinking like, that's kind of a weird thing. This is kind of strange. And eventually it got to the point where she found herself posting in a way that wasn't really who she was, and she has since denounced her own movement she started. She does not necessarily identify as a TradWife anymore because she found the extreme right like taking TradWife into a new realm, a very political realm. She was always asked how she felt about gay people. I don't think she's homophobic. She's apolitical in this sense of she's not like a reactionary. So she found that the association between the two was really odd and off-put her from her own like thing she sort of started. Well,
and I'm looking at some stuff about her now, and I'm seeing that she actually was interviewed by the BBC in 2020, right before the pandemic started, actually, it looks like.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, that was her first like big interview.
Right. But then there's something about that happening, and there's something about gaining a media profile that sort of forces you to then lean into whatever that thing is for the sake of your brand. This happens everywhere in new media. You have to determine, because attention is such a scarce commodity and you have to hyper specialize in terms of your audience.
Absolutely.
You have to find what engages people and then double, triple, quadruple down on that thing. Because I am seeing, like you said in this video, she's wearing normal clothes.
Yeah.
She's not doing the weird, like, dolled up, hyper ultra feminine thing. She's just being, I guess, a little bit more trad, a trad wife, if you will.
So I have a couple of categories that we'll get to, but she is like one of the few types that I consider a true trad. Genuinely someone who just likes the idea of raising a family, maybe living on a farm, maybe just like staying at home, raising a family. She is like genuinely like the truest of that type of person. And it comes across in like every interview she's ever done.
But what I will say is, I mean, I'm just looking at the description here too, that Alena, who lives in the UK, says it's about, quote, submitting to and spoiling her husband like it's 1959, end quote.
Yes.
That says one thing very specifically and ideologically. And then the second thing really makes alarm bells go off for me, which is that she supports a return to, quote, traditional English manners, lifestyle, and values.
Yeah.
She's got like all over the house, like Union Jacks and St. George's crosses and shit like that. Like she is doing the damn thing. And our British listeners will definitely know when you say that, it almost always means something else, which is to say Muslims out. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what she believes, but like when you use this kind of rhetoric, you are going to naturally attract people who do think that kind of shit.
And that's sort of the whole deal about tradwifism is like even at the base of it, like she is like what I would consider a true trad, and she considers herself apolitical, but it has an inherent political ideology and a cultural effect that comes from that is hard to you can't separate it from politics. So I think before we get too ahead of ourselves, I'm gonna lay out the 3 categories of tradwife that I think I found in my investigation here. All tradwifery is rooted within aestheticism, as it's an attempt to create its own culture, which is the tradwife culture, or the attempt to return to an old period of Western culture.
Sure.
So it's all aestheticism.
It's like an imagined version of the past. Like,
right.
What are all of the things about what we see as the apex of, like you're saying, Western culture, Western society, when, let's be real, white Brits and Americans were on top? What was so great about those times in terms of how we perceive that moment in the media, in art, in style? How do we bring that shit back, and then how do we repurpose it to our own ends now?
And I have found 3 different ends that they bring it to. So number 1, as I mentioned before, it's the true trad. And it's primarily just the aesthetic for the sake of the aesthetic. I'm not saying that it's not political, because all of this I do think inherently is political, but it's more so maybe about like, oh, you just want to have a lot of kids, you want to live at home, you want the man, the husband to provide for you, which is, sort of anti-feminist, so it is political.
But not political in the like electoral sense, right? They're not trying to become a bloc. They're not trying to align themselves with organized political movements.
Correct. Yeah, I think that is the distinction with that for number 1. And number 2 is the political trad, which is the aesthetic for political means, for electoral means, trying to change laws, trying to change the overall culture rather than just like for your own family. And that's, of course, I think the most nefarious of all of this, like the entire tradwife ideology. And we'll get really into that one very soon. And the final one, the 3rd type of trad, which I think is mostly, I would say the least harmful of the 3, arguably, but it's also just kind of goofy, is like the fetishist trad.
Right.
And it's primarily just like the tradwife aesthetic for men's pleasure, for like OnlyFans content.
Here I am, honey. Welcome home. I've made you pancakes, and I'm wearing this dress that shows off my big boobies.
I'm being such a good wife. I'm so submissive. I submit to you. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah. So as we talked about before, there was the Estee person. There was the Nara
I think
Smith
it's
person. Estee. It's probably Estee.
It's either Estee or Estee, yeah.
Something about a lot of these trad people is they got some goofy names, is what I've noticed.
So
they
true.
all kind of have, they're often Mormons. Mormons have some silly names.
They sure do.
A weird thing about them. But another person that in retrospect is not someone I realized was doing tradwife content very early for the like political trad angle. And that was Abby Shapiro, or nowadays she got married, changed her last name. She's Abby Roth now, Ben Shapiro's sister.
Yes.
I think a lot of us probably remember, a lot of us in the early days of Twitter, pre-Elon Musk, she was posting all the time on there. She was classically trained with her voice. She was a singer.
She was
singer.
Classically Abby. That's her screen name.
That was her old YouTube channel, was Classically Abby. She was like proper manners, proper like feminine, proper everything. She was creating that sort of content very early on. A lot of her videos seem fairly harmless. Just a sample of some of the titles was 7 Amazing Things About Being a Mom, and another one being How to Be a Better Homemaker. Like all, fairly harmless sounding content. But then she would sprinkle in between those very political videos about talking about, the evils of leftists, and this is what leftists want to take from you.
In today's video, I want to talk about 5 things that the left tells women that just make me mad. Number 1, why does the left insist on telling women that sex with random people is empowering? It's not. It's just not. Having sex with one man who loves you, respects you, wants to have a family with you, that's empowering.
So it would try to bring in family content minded people and then sprinkle in the very explicit political propaganda for their own causes that, of course, are always going to be a more traditional gender roles, anti-feminist, and pro-religious perspective.
Right. And this is an intentional strategy, right? This didn't happen by accident, right?
Absolutely. They didn't wake up someday and were like, wow, this kind of turned out pretty well for us. No, this has been a long time strategy of the right.
Or even for Abby specifically being like, wow, I sure ended up making a lot of political videos, huh? No. This is a funnel. They are doing this intentionally.
The person who coined this strategy was Andrew Breitbart, the founder of Breitbart News, which was a far-right news publication that was a lot more relevant, I would say, in Trump's first term and prior. But he worked with Steve Bannon early on, and they put together this political theory that politics is downstream of culture, which in essence, you can subtly influence culture, which will have a slow but butterfly effect of shaping politics and shifting the Overton window, which I think has proven fairly effective, sadly.
Yeah.
They have truly done a lot of damage with this political theory. The first case study, which we are not getting into on this show probably ever at all, but Steve Bannon's involvement with Gamergate.
Yeah.
He got involved with the Gamergate movement pretty early and pretty quickly shifted a lot of the early online gaming sphere into a very right-wing space that we know of it today. The TradWife sphere of content is another one of these instances of shifting the culture to shift the politics.
Yes, it is creating a genre, basically, of content for the sake of capturing people's attention, thereby rewiring them to another political alignment. PragerU also does this really, really effectively by going after actual kids, right? The idea is that this is educational material for young children and teenagers. But what it really is a full-fledged project of ideological capture. And they're really fucking good at this.
They are. Sadly, the right wing has really mastered this, as we see in some states now. I think Florida is one of them. They are showing children PragerU videos. Oklahoma, where Christopher Columbus essentially says in one of these videos that slavery was a good thing, which is fucking crazy that they're showing this to children.
Yep.
So this is a strategy they employ in so many different realms. There's just a lot of danger in just shrugging a lot of this style of content off, just being like, oh, it's harmless. Oh, what effect does this really have? And it's this sort of thing can have a big effect. So I think from there, I think a dive into each type of TradWife is in order.
Okay.
So we kind of talked a little bit about what I would consider the true trad, which is, the type of woman who is just living the life. She just wants to live a homestead life.
Yeah, she just really wants to milk some cows.
She does. She does. They find that lovely. That's their goal in life is to just have a lot of milk.
You can't say that. You can't be saying that about the TradWives.
Look, it's what they want. They like it. I'm sure they like it. So something that I've noticed with a lot of TradWives is it's almost so not every person I can imagine has to be religious, but it's almost an inherently religious ideology.
Yeah.
It's very hard to find a TradWife who is not also a very religious person.
And by very religious, you mean almost always Christian, right? Like with the
Almost.
exception of people like Abby Shapiro / Roth, who is Jewish.
She is one of a few. It's primarily Christian, evangelical Christian, and Mormons.
Right, of course.
This is one of the episodes we're going to be getting into Mormons more than normal, just because there is a sort of cultural overlap within the religious nature of Mormonism that just sort of works really well with the type of tradwife that we know today. That tends to lead people to being very skeptical of modern feminism. They really buy into traditional gender roles where the wife submits to the man. That's a phrase I read a lot while researching tradwives, is that the tradwife submits to the man. And I find that just so ominous. It's so scary to me.
Well, and we talked about this a little bit too with the Focus on the Family episode, where it's not just that women submit to their husbands, it's also that the man, right, being the husband, being the head of the house, reflects the way that our Heavenly Father, God himself, is the head of our shared the collective household, I guess, as humans? Question mark?
And it really reflects in the way that they live this tradwife life, where the man makes most of the decisions. I've read interviews where the wife will be like, "Oh, I have to consult my husband on buying things like a couch." The husband provides like all monetary, like he's works a job. It's a single income household, and it's purely like he is the true head of the house in all real terms.
The model that I've often seen is this idea that like the woman is at least theoretically in charge of the domestic domain.
Right. That's the extent of it. Yeah.
Whereas the man is in charge of everything else. And so like you said, buying a couch, she's going to suggest the couch. But again, because this ultimately comes down to spending money, the husband's still going to be the one to sign off on that because he's the one who controls the finances.
Yeah. And the thing that's so scary to me about this, when you think about it in a broader political project, is it's so very reminiscent of a time, this sort of lifestyle, when women didn't really have rights at all. And this was just like the life women had to live. Women couldn't vote, own property, work at all in workplaces. And, it sounds super harmless to maybe like as an individual, on an individual basis, for people to live like this, the true trad. But it does have that culture altering effect that can bring it to dark places, because as we know, there are people like in the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, that want to break down a lot of these rights and bring us to an older time in Western culture where maybe women will again not have a lot of these rights. So of course, women have the freedom to choose to be a tradwife, but it does have that awful reminiscence of a bad time for women.
Well, because generally speaking, from what I've seen, the advocacy is not so much individual one-on-one, hey, I love getting up in the morning and feeding the goats and fucking, throwing the cast iron stove on or whatever.
Yeah.
It's you all need to do this. This is the way that all women should be living. And some of these, I guess, influencers take a softer tack on it. But you're exactly right that it's very clear at the end of the day that they don't want women to have the choice to do it or not do it. They want all women to be leading this lifestyle.
And because there is this like very large Christian religious aspect to it, the thing that tends to bring a lot of people to the tradwife life, the tradwifery, if you will, is entering the church,
right,
and getting involved with a heavily evangelical or Mormon community. There is just a higher propensity of these kinds of people in these communities, and when that becomes your community, you tend to emulate the type of people that you see. And of course, religion tends to uphold traditional gender roles, prioritizing marriage, and of course, especially with tradwives, having as many children as possible.
Right.
Because that is, at the end of the day, with tradwives, pretty much the primary goal is to raise massive families.
Yes. And there's some overlap here with something that I'm going to do an episode about maybe next week called the Quiverful movement, which is a very specific evangelical Christian thing that discourages the use of all contraception, not exactly on the same grounds as Catholics who are like the whole, every sperm is sacred thing.
Yeah.
For these specific quiverful Protestants, the idea is that God has commanded us to be fruitful and multiply, and as such, raising these households where you've got a fuckload of kids is actually just obeying Jesus. It's doing the thing that we were told to do. But there's a difference also between that and the TradWife thing, right?
There is.
Having a whole bunch of kids doesn't necessarily mean living off the land and keeping a bunch of goats, right?
No.
So what's up with that?
It's part of the whole aesthetic. That's I think the difference between like Quiverful and TradWife is it's all about the aesthetic. And something you'll notice is a lot of TradWives tend to have social media presence.
Right.
And they tend to be fairly successful, which is interesting because the entire part of being a TradWife that at least I identified is not having to work a real job, but you raise a family. But they're content creators a lot of the time. They make a lot of money from content creation. It's a weird paradox of this whole thing is that they tend to make more money. Of course, not every single TradWife, but there is so many examples of TradWives that make a lot of money through their creation, their content creation.
And I think the flip side of that, too, is that also part of the idea of being traditional is that you should sort of eschew modern technology
which they don't.
In favor of the past, and they just don't do that, straight up.
There is, I watched a documentary about this TradWife farm family that called Ballerina Farms, and they've spent a lot of money on modern, like, farm tech, automatic cow churners. What do you call that shit? Automatic.
What, milkers?
Yeah.
Is that what you call it?
Automatic milkers.
I'm not a dairy expert. Send me an email. Let me know.
Automatic milkers.
Dairy farmers, sound off in the email. illconceivedpod@gmail.com.
They love new technology because a lot of the thing you'll notice with a lot of these people, if the TradWife isn't making a lot of money, the husband tends to be making a lot of money from something.
Sure.
Tends to be very wealthy. And that sort of upholds the whole TradWife life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's sort of just like the very basic true trad, as I call it. This is where it gets a little bit dicier, a little bit scarier, as if that's not scary enough, the true trad. So we're going to be talking about the political trad.
Yes.
And they're overwhelmingly, pretty explicitly right-wing, like very right-wing. They love Donald Trump. They have all the types of pro-conservative messaging underlying almost everything they believe, talk about on social media, because a lot of these people, again, are content creators. A lot of this culture comes across through people like Candace Owens and Abby Shapiro. And again, all of it is to have a massive family. That is the underlying part of the political trad.
Yeah, I think one good example of this would be guys who I want to be very clear we will never do an entire episode about, but the Simone and Malcolm Collins, right? Simone Collins, her whole thing, the whole like way she dresses up with the weird bonnet and all that shit, it's purely aesthetic, but she does it because it presents a certain way, it brings a certain kind of person in, and then it allows them to advance their political project, which is mostly just their shitty podcast.
I've never listened to it. Is it bad?
Of course it is.
I believe it. I don't need to listen to know. And yeah, it's, a lot of these people are always like, oh, families have been attacked. Secularism and feminism has attacked the family. The left is anti-having children. All of this is basically underlining their belief that America should be a traditional white nuclear family first country. Another big part of the political trad is their religiousness. And of course, as I said, that's a big part of all TradWives, but this comes a lot more into play in how they portray their politics, I think, because it explicitly, their religiousness explicitly is anti-secular feminism. They want to reinforce gender binaries. They are, of course, absolutely always anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-just queer as a whole. One thing that you'll always notice is that they truly believe that women are on a lesser level than men. And they believe that that is like the will of God. Like God said, women are lesser than. And I guess if you do believe in like creationism, you will probably believe that.
Yeah.
That's the Bible story.
The weaker vessel and all that shit. Yeah. Because also, you naturally then will be distrustful toward claims of the feminist claims that, like, the reason that women can't reach a certain level within the corporate world or whatever is because of bigotry or prejudice or whatever. It's like, well, no, it's just women aren't as good. And you just got to deal with that.
Do that. Yeah. I always question how truly they do believe that, but I do think there is like genuine true believers, and they want more people to be true believers in that way.
Yeah, I think as with everything, it varies on a case-to-case basis, because it's always hard with these people to tell how much of it is just like craven and cynical performance versus true belief.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but I think there is a lot of very clear true beliefs underlying their politics. Like, for example, they're always anti-abortion as well. You know, they were some of the biggest proponents of abolishing Roe v. Wade, and now some of them are the biggest anti-trans politics and general anti-feminist politics, like people involved in those spaces today.
And this all makes sense given that at bottom they're trying to get people to have more kids, and they see abortion as well as people being trans as a threat to that objective.
For sure. And it can get as extreme as women saying that they don't think women should be able to vote in elections. Like they can get to some real anti-women, like beliefs that they want to reverse women's rights pre-1950s. They truly believe that as a project and will espouse that to their audiences. Something we're seeing growing beyond the TradWife and TradWife ideology is just general skepticism of modern medicine and hospitals and doctors. And I mean, just today, there was the story about Florida getting rid of vaccine mandates. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. Yeah, the entire state of Florida is now intending to roll back vaccine requirements, which is just... For schools. So it's like you're going to get fucking smallpox outbreaks again.
Florida wants to see if the human life expectancy can go back down to 40 years old again. They're going to do their best to see.
Well, but I mean, you say that as a joke, but like that's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the other thing about, it's not even with these like really hardcore TradWives, it's not even 1950s shit.
Yeah.
They want to go back to like pre-industrial revolution shit.
Right.
And if you want to go back there, people didn't live very long back then.
People died all the time. That's why people had so many kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you kept on losing your children during and directly after pregnancy.
Yeah. Or they worked in the fields. They toiled the fields and like just died or whatever. Like kids, a lot of people just died back then. And it seemed they truly seemed to want to bring us back to that, which I don't understand that.
I live pretty close to a cemetery, and it's always interesting to walk around because it's a really old cemetery.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of really old headstones. And if you look around at the people who are like getting buried in the 1800s, half of that shit is fucking babies. Actual babies getting buried.
Sad. It's sad. I did a very similar thing in college. I used my dorm was right by a cemetery as well. You'd see that all the fucking time. If someone was born in the 1800s, they probably did not make it out of the 1800s a lot of the time.
Even if they were born in like 1880.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, especially that. And with a lot of this like recent strange medicinal skepticism, and I know you've seen this. You sent an image of this to me of a TikTok creator. A lot of these people have a fascination with natural births.
Yes.
They don't really want to go to hospitals and get like a C-section or even be in a hospital with a doctor at all. They want to be in their home with candle lights in like a bath with their husband and a midwife. That is no painkillers even too in some cases. No painkillers. Fucking crazy.
Well,
They are fascinated with this.
This is a complicated subject that we could unpack a lot more. And we did talk about this a little bit during our episode about abortion policy. But the capture of pregnancy and like childbirth by doctors who are at least were and still are, but are to now a lesser extent disproportionately male, did sever a fair bit of tradition around giving birth. And there are important things about like traditional midwifery and stuff like that you lose when you have hospital births. And also we know that as regards things like infant mortality, the deck is very skewed against like Black women and poor women and the kind of woman who is already heavily discriminated against by American systems, right? And so there's a grain of truth there that the sort of industrialization of medicine has been bad for women in a way. But it's a lot like with vaccines, where they are identifying something that is real, which is that pharmaceutical companies have the ability to market medications and they have the ability to keep inventing new medications of questionable effect sometimes. And then they blow the whole thing up and they say, you should always give birth at home. Nobody should ever get vaccinated.
Yeah.
All doctors are lying to you. I'm going to go drink a gallon of raw milk. And then they get listeria and they fucking die. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like with COVID, how there was like a question about masking procedures and like stuff like that. So then a lot of people were like, oh, ivermectin is the only thing we need. And it's very sad because it does have a lot of implications about health and like the health of children a lot of the time.
And again, to the point of children, isn't the whole idea that we're going to be raising these children in a world that is better for kids? I thought that's what you wanted.
Apparently not. They tend to just always embrace conspiracy theories, chemtrails, all of these things generally around health. Very similar to the true trad, but again, this is the nefarious aspect of it. They just don't think women should really have too many rights. They shouldn't be in the workplace. They should just be a homemaker and the property of a man. That is the underlying ideology of the political trad. And a lot of these people love to homeschool their children.
Of course. We're definitely going to do a whole episode about homeschooling at some point.
Absolutely.
Because that is an entire other... I was going to say bag of worms. That's not a phrase that anybody ever says.
It's a phrase now. It's a bag of worms.
Okay.
They had bags of worms in the 1800s. They didn't know what cans were yet. Yeah.
That's right. We have to return to bagging our worms. I bagged these worms by hand.
All natural for content. But no, homeschooling children, we'll absolutely talk more about that. But it goes back to what we talked about with like the sex education episodes, where a lot of these people just inherently distrust public education and they don't want their children learning certain things like about sex ed or gender identity or things like that, or just distrust public school in general. So they just want more control over their children's life in that way.
Right.
So that sort of wraps up the political trad, or at least the main tenets of the political trad. Very bad stuff. If I had to guess, the political trad is probably the most common type of, at least ideological TradWife.
And it's definitely the kind that you're, I think, most likely to stumble across online because this is a very intentionally organized movement. There's money behind this, and they are trying to use this as one of many attack vectors to shift the culture.
And a lot of these people aren't necessarily even living the life. It's more about using the aesthetic of TradWife for the political means. That it's way more about that than anything else for them. They don't need to live the lifestyle. They might have a lot of kids sometimes, but they're not living on a homestead. They're not they don't have cows a lot of the time. They're not always doing that. That's less common in the political trad. Now kind of the goofy one though is the fetishism trad. And this is, as I mentioned before, the type of TradWife that is pretty much just like all for the men's pleasure, all for the man's pleasure.
Much like Janet Jackson, she's all for you.
Yeah, that's right. They're always saying this.
They're always saying, "Hey, you got a nice package, all right. Guess I'm going to have to ride it tonight."
Yeah, it's very sexual stuff. It's like always. It's like pretty much if it's not just straight up porn, it's safe for work porn.
Absolutely.
Essentially, and like OnlyFans, it's a type of content that you'll see where it's probably just someone trying to profit off of the aesthetic itself and don't really buy into the lifestyle. Most of these people probably are not TradWives outside of the content they make. I don't think so either. It's just about the submissiveness. It's about being a meek woman for a man is I think the appeal there.
And my thought on this, honestly, get that bag. Like as long as the market's available, right? Profit off of stupid men. I think that's fine.
And there's a part of me that's like that is fine. but it does still have that cultural downstream effect
that is true.
could influence politics, where it is portraying a culture of submissive women that are giving into a power dynamic of a stronger man. And like,
but so
there's
does most like mainstream pornography, right?
And it does. It does. So there is that, like I'm saying, it's not, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world, but it could still have that downstream effect possibly. But otherwise, get that bag. It's fine.
Yeah.
Do it. Take that money. So Josh,
yes.
you know, I love lists.
You do.
You love lists. I think everyone that listens to this show loves lists.
That's why they're listening.
Listed. Yeah, you're a listener. We're listening. That's our list-teners. That's you know how like podcasts have names for the listeners?
Yeah.
Everyone's a list-tener here.
Is that gonna be our fan name? Listeners?
I hope not, actually.
That's
no,
horrible.
That's definitely horrible. No, definitely not that. We'll come up with a better one. But I while researching a bit about like the TradWife ideology, specifically like the more cultural aspects of it, I dug into what like a right-wing TradWife conservative might be reading. I found this publication called, I think it's pronounced Evie?
Or Evie, maybe?
Evie?
Yeah.
It's
probably Evie, yeah.
I think Evie. Which is, it's a right-wing relationship woman-focused publication. And I found this article, The 4 Levels of Manliness, because of course, when you're a TradWife, it's all about finding the right man.
That's right. That's right.
So there's different levels here. And what I'm doing right now with you is I'm trying to figure out what kind of man you are.
That's a great question. Is Evie magazine, like, are they publishing a lot of trad type shit? Is that kind of...
They are, yeah. It's a lot about focusing on like beauty and like women, like just women's culture from like that right wing traditional perspective.
I'm seeing their current cover story is about Ballerina Farm. Okay.
Yep. No, it's very trad minded. Let's get into the types of men.
Let's figure it out.
So the first one is the loser.
Oh, well, that's me.
Well, don't get ahead of yourself. I don't think this is you.
Oh,
because
okay.
you don't live with your parents.
That's true.
You work a couple of jobs.
I do.
The loser has neither of the.
Okay.
The loser lives at home with
has
the
no
parents,
prospects.
no job, no prospects, no drive, no nothing.
Okay, then I'm not a loser.
Mom, dad pay for everything.
Right.
So you're not a loser.
No, I'm not.
It's essentially this piece describes the loser as a child still. Right. So you're not a child. You're not the loser.
I'm a child of God.
You are. Famously, you are very evangelical still. So the second type of man is the dude.
Oh.
A type of
like,
man,
like from The Big Lebowski?
Like, yeah, he's bowling. He bowls.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, that's me.
I still don't know if this describes you, but we'll figure it out. This man has a job, but he's just like, he's a drone. He's a worker drone. He clocks in, goes home, whatever. He doesn't really have too many prospects going for him. Not super disciplined. He doesn't have too many goals in his life. And I think you have goals. I think you have a lot going for you. Knowing you, the length I've had, I don't think you're a dude. I don't think you're just like sitting in front of the TV playing Call of Duty every day. That's not you.
No,
that's
definitely
not you.
not.
So number 3, the good man.
Oh.
This man is mature and feels comfortable in his skin. He's
Okay.
done playing games. He's
Damn.
ready to commit and get married. Faithful, responsible. He's just a great guy to be with.
Okay.
He helps maintain the status quo.
Oh.
And for some women, this is like a pretty decent man, but it's not peak. It's not the best you can be.
Oh,
There's
you can still do better.
A
Okay.
higher level. There is a higher level. But I do think, maybe I'm wrong, but I do think you might be this type of guy. I think you might be the good man.
Josh Goodman.
Yeah.
Can I ascend to the ultimate level of man?
I think you can be. I think you can become the hero.
The hero?
The hero. It's called the hero. And I don't know if you're looking at this with me.
I'm not. I'm listening. I'm taking it all in.
So there is a GIF on this article of Iron Man. From from one of the Marvel movies.
So I can be Tony Stark. Okay.
You could be Tony Stark. You're a go-getter, incredibly hardworking, highly intelligent, bold, not afraid to take risks. You have a family and a wife. You have many children. You have embraced the godly vision of the family.
Shit.
You prioritize the family, you prioritize the community, but you focus on yourself. You have, you're a CEO, you're powerful, you're a strong leader.
Okay.
You take a heavy load, you take everything off the family's plate.
Taking a heavy load or two in my day.
Yeah, in secret without the wife knowing.
That's right.
So like, I think you could become a hero. I think one day you could, but I think right now you're just a good man.
Yeah, okay. I'll work on it. So I'm also seeing like the gifts that they have here.
Yeah.
And so for the dude, they have Aziz Ansari in Parks and Rec. For the good man, they have Office Jim. And then, the hero, they've got Tony Stark. And the other thing that I'm noticing about this is like there's an ad down here for the print edition, and it looks the word mark they use on the cover of the print magazine looks just like L. It's very like if you weren't looking closely, you could get it confused with the magazine Elle, and I think that's intentional.
Oh, I'm sure, because I've never heard of this before, but it seems to have some sort of audience, and I'm sure they got it somehow.
Probably the trads.
Yeah, so this is the sort of content a lot of these, like, maybe more conservative, religious TradWife types are consuming, this sort of thing, you know, reinforcing like a very male-focused life.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's all about the man. It's all about the man.
That's what I'm noticing. And I'm also noticing that there's a certain level of like wish casting going on here.
It's very Tumblr in a weird way.
Yeah.
It feels very Tumblr.
It does. And it's like, well, you know, all you got to do is find the right man, and then everything's going to click into place for you.
Yeah.
There really doesn't seem to be any idea of like interiority for what this means for the woman.
No.
It's all just like focus on the man.
I would say that's like the whole thing about TradWives is it's
Yeah.
making the women focus on the man. It's foregoing any goals that they might have for family and taking care of a man. So it sort of tracks with this type of content tracks with the underlying ideology, the cultural force of TradWives. So that, you know, that's very fun. I'm glad we determined what kind of man you are.
Yeah,
I hope you took something away so far.
Yeah, what am I? I'm the hero? Or I'm maybe going to be the hero.
One day. I don't
but
think
for
you're
now,
there
I'm
yet.
still Josh Goodman. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're the good man. So keeping in the theme with the lists, we went through the three type of TradWives I identified. We sort of took a peek at their culture, but where do a lot of these people come from?
Oh, I think I know the answer. Teacher?
Yeah, okay, yes. Josh, what do you say?
I'm going to say the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Absolutely. They're primarily all fucking Mormons. The Mormonism is huge with TradWives. It's pretty much any big TradWife content creator that you might stumble upon is a Mormon.
Okay.
The Nara Smith, I believe Estee, like almost all of them are. The Ballerina Farms person, Mormon, all fucking Mormons all the way down.
Yeah.
And the primary reason is just Mormonism has a theory of gender that's very inherent to the religion in a way that it might not always be with like Catholicism. Growing up in Catholicism, I don't really remember them talking about like traditional gender roles very much.
Well, it's not written down explicitly in the same way, right?
No,
like you have to understand that this is also Joseph Smith constructing a religion that allows him to do what he wants to do,
which
right?
is build a harem, have many wives.
Exactly.
Yeah. And of course, to do that, he had to outline how to be the perfect feminine and godly woman for a man. So that is sort of where that overlap comes from, because if you are in the Mormon faith, you grow up in a culture of having to be this perfect woman for a man. And as we talked about in the Purity Balls episode, that also is a very similar type of culture that might raise people to become TradWives. And Mormons, they love big fucking families.
And it was certainly policy of the church. Now, to be clear, I'm not a Mormon. I never have been, not an expert. But I do have friends who are like ex-Mormon, and absolutely, from a very young age, you get it drilled into your fucking skull that the reason that you're around is to continue to have a lot of kids.
Another part of this culture that they ingrain around you is like women don't have a lot of power within the church. They can't be religious leaders in the church.
Right.
So they have to find their own path in a sense. And most of the time that is just raising a family. And you know how I mentioned before how a lot of these TikTok creators who are Mormons make a lot of food from scratch and are very strange about food. Mormons are really fucking weird with food and drink. They can't drink alcohol. They can't drink coffee, tea, smoke, chewing tobacco, even hot drinks.
To be clear, a lot of them do those things. But you're right that they are not allowed to.
They're not allowed to. And of course, that goes for any religion. Most religions are not allowed to do many things, but a lot of them ignore that. But I think that Mormonism has a stronger cultural sway over their followers than Catholics might have. So it just creates this odd culture where you might spend hours, and of course this is always for content in regards to a lot of the Tradwife type people, where you might just make Cinnamon Toast Crunch from scratch. Because they're just really fucking odd about food.
So much sugar. Much sugar for an idea that we are doing all of this because we pride ourselves on being healthy, which is a big part of the whole Tradwife thing too. It's okay, but you're also consuming 1,000% of your recommended daily value of sugar every day.
Another weird aspect of Mormons that I think we'll probably have to do a whole Mormon episode at some point, especially this relationship between them, the Mormonism and multi-level marketing world. MLMs, I'm sure, so that's actually something I've known about for over a decade now. I've always been fascinated by just people getting enticed and brought into MLM culture. And I guess for context, just for people who aren't familiar with them, Josh, can you quickly describe what MLMs are?
Yes. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the home of Amway. Can I describe what MLMs are?
Can you describe
Absolutely.
them?
Yeah, no. The idea of a multi-level marketing corporation is that rather than selling a product directly to the consumer, the business model has people who are independent business owners. They categorize them as that. And what these independent business owners do is they purchase product from the company, and then they have to then turn around and sell that product to whoever. Right? And with time, what happens is you also recruit other people into the company, and you are then able to get a cut of the profits that the people downline of you are making by selling those goods. And it meshes very well with Mormonism, because Mormonism is also essentially a pyramid scheme where you are trying to convert as many people as possible into the religion, and also all of the skills that you learn when you go out on your mission, which you have to do for a couple years. They're all to do with finding people, talking to them, and then basically closing them on a product, purchasing a product, which of course in that case is being a Mormon, but in the other cases is buying some fucking essential oils or whatever.
And because Mormonism is a very community-oriented religion, people have very tight-knit communities, right. It just meshes very well with MLMs. And especially because a lot of these people have bigger families, they might think incorrectly, because a lot of these drain families of money, because that's just how these scams work. They go into these thinking, oh, I have a lot of children and I need more money. We don't have enough money to make ends meet. I am going to side hustle on the side, get on that grind set and sell my friends' products.
Right.
So a lot of these have just started in Utah. So there's a crazy overlap there. And we'll get into more of these and Mormonism as a whole another day.
But I guess to sort of put a bow on the whole Mormon Tradwife thing, what do you think is the key piece of that connection? Why are these two things so synonymous with each other?
So it's absolutely because of the type of culture that the religion itself imparts on women, and particularly young women.
You think Mormon women are just primed to find this shit appealing?
Absolutely, because the religion itself talks a lot about traditional gender norms and imparting that on to people growing up having big families. It is just part and parcel of this religion. I think that is generally why, because they grew up in it. If you grow up in a space, you're more likely to end up how you were raised. Yeah. I think that is a big part of it. So the goal with being a Tradwife and natalism as a whole is to just have a lot of kids.
Of course.
And Tradwives tend to have a lot of children. And I don't know, I don't have any kids, but the thought of having one child or two children sounds really fucking tough.
Yeah, no, I'd rather have no kids and three money.
Yeah, that sounds pretty relaxed, kind of chill. A lot of these people have up to 10 kids, a lot of children. That sounds really fucking difficult. The thing that is very difficult for a lot of these families is a lot of them don't embrace having like help or caretakers.
Right.
It is usually just all on the mother, the
Yes.
woman, the Tradwife.
Well, and I think more accurately then too, it ends up being on the kids to basically be sub-parents.
Yeah, they become a surrogate parent. They help raise the older children, help raise the younger children, sometimes in education, which is kind of insane to me that there's like a 13-year-old teaching like an 8-year-old how to do
It's
math.
nuts. It's nuts.
Absolutely
and it
fucking
absolutely
crazy.
should not be. Because that's the thing, too, is that I think that if you take the very distant view and you talk about these things in the abstract, right? Of like, yeah, we have this wonderful large family and all of our kids care for each other and they help each other out with tasks. And they, the older kids mentor the younger kids and they're able to sort of like different sets of kids are able to have their own special interests. And isn't that so wonderful because they're all able to care for each other? And yeah, in the abstract, that sounds delightful. But then you drill down to the nuts and bolts of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And
then you find a 7-year-old cooking for a 5-year-old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or a 7-year-old cooking for the whole family, maybe. Right?
Yeah. And that sounds like a horrible way to live. I found a fascinating interview of someone who grew up in that sort of family environment, and she really came to resent that lifestyle and basically has worked her entire life as an adult. She is like in her 40s, I believe. At this point, maybe even 50s now, where it really impacted her entire life, the way she views the world, her entire life. It might sound idealistic to grow up in a family setting like this, but it's not so good for everyone, as I quickly learned. People growing up in these environments, it's
There's one quote in this article that I really like, and this is called "What It's Like to Be a Trad Kid." It was in Vox. You were given one map. Sarah, a former trad kid who asked that her full name not be used, told me. And if that map doesn't work for you, then you have nothing.
And you see that theme a lot with a lot of Tradwife culture, not even just with like trad kids. When you box yourself into this lifestyle, it truly can box you out of pretty much anything. Let's say a woman gets in a very tight spot. They want to get divorced from their husband. Right. They're in their 40s. They have never had a career. They've never had to work. Like, that's a very difficult place for someone to be. So when similarly someone grows up in that space, they might think that is the only option for them. They've lost their childhood, maybe in some regards. Their entire childhood were helping to raise their siblings. Like, that takes so much away from people.
Yeah, and it's at the end of the day, it's all in service of natalism. It's all in service of just like, let's have more kids. The question isn't even, is it right for anyone at this point? Is it right for the parents? Is it right for the kids? Is it right for the broader family? Those questions go by the wayside because this is at its core an ideological movement, not a practical one.
No, that's the ultimate concern, is that like, this isn't what's best for anyone, other than like maybe the birth rate will increase from a 1.7 to a 1.8 if a lot more people just start doing this. Like, how much does that really serve if half of those new children are miserable?
Right.
Like, what is the purpose of this if everyone is just more miserable?
Well, I don't know. We've gotten the white birth rate up, I guess. Genuinely, though, right? Like, no,
that's what it is. That's what it's all about.
And that's the thing, too, that, like, to guys zoom out a little bit here, looking at the article that we talked about a little bit earlier, right? The Washington Post one, where they're now trying to create these new incentives to have more children. The best incentive for people, if you want them to have more children, and you want a future where people are willing to have more children, is to create the idea of a future that you would want your kids to live in.
Absolutely.
But they're not going to fucking do that, because that would require regulating the oil industry and making serious changes to the fundamental structure of the country and the world. They're not going to do that because it doesn't benefit their bottom line at the end of the day.
And it's not even just that it benefits their bottom line, but it's also just, I feel like it's easier for these people, like Heritage Foundation, for example, to imagine a world where all they have to do to fix the birth rate is just take away some women's rights,
Right.
get them out of the workplace, incentivize them to just get married, to become homesteaders, to have 5 children because that's their only goal in life, than it is to just create economic stability and like a future for people.
Well, and that's a future that they can imagine because it's the future that they want.
It is, yeah, ideologically and religiously.
And it's also the past that they imagine.
Yeah. Which, of course, it wasn't that. People, as we said before, people lived until they were like 40
Right.
in these days. It was not this idealistic TikTok, like the types of TradWife content you see on TikTok and Reels is not anywhere close to what it was before. People can do that sort of thing today because there is a lot of these people tend to have a lot of stability, economic stability. Right. They can create this like very idealistic version of the past when it is just nothing like that.
Well, June, I do see that because we love a list on this show, you have come up with 4 requirements to be a TradWife.
Yes.
And I would love to hear about that.
Absolutely. So the first one, as we were just talking about, is you absolutely need a successful single income husband.
Got it.
If you do not have that, how can you be a TradWife?
Right. And we're looking for a hero here. We're not just looking for a good man. We're definitely not looking for a dude. And by no means are we looking for a loser.
No, definitely not. It needs to be a hero. He needs to take on a lot of responsibility, prioritize the family, so you can create the family.
Right.
And the part of this requirement that is the double-edged sword here is this is all the TradWife knows. This is all she has. So if this doesn't work out, it can create maybe a bad situation if she ever wants to get a divorce.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. It's not going to get worse.
He's a hero.
That's
he's
right.
a hero.
That's right.
And the second TradWife requirement, ill-conceived certified TradWife requirement.
This is a certified ill-conceived TradWife requirement.
Is you must create a large family. If you are doing this, if you're living the TradWife lifestyle and you don't have a large family, what's it all for?
Yeah.
I feel like at that point, it's just a kink, right? You're just doing it for a kink level thing. But if you're a true TradWife, if you're truly believe in the cause, truly want this for you, you're probably going to have like at least 8 kids. That is the second requirement.
Right.
Because you need to continue your lineage. You need to be godly, which is, of course, what God wants, especially in the Mormon faith, large families.
Yep. And I think an important point here, too, is that this is a requirement, of course, but it's also a reward. We talked about this a little bit last week, right? Having kids is the reward for doing all this shit.
Yes,
and it's going to be great. You're going to love it.
You're going to love how your 12-year-old will teach science, biology to your 8-year-old. You're going to love it. It's going to turn out really well. And the ill-conceived third TradWife requirement is you have to join the church.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to, but you're really not a true TradWife. You probably should because that is the whole underlying thing. Part of being a TradWife is rejecting modern secular feminism. So if you don't have feminism, if you don't have a secular ideology, you're probably going to find community and worth in the faith.
Yeah, and that, you're going to find other TradWives who you can TradWife it up with. You can engage in mutual TradWifery.
TradWifery. And the final ill-conceived TradWife requirement, number 4, is you have to make all of this look really easy and really fun at all times.
Yeah.
This cannot look like a job. It has to look like something you're doing because, God, you just love it so much. Mm-hmm. It has to be effortless. You have to take care of the home, 7 kids, maybe a farm, upkeep a home.
The whole farm. All those goats. Those goats aren't going to feed themselves. You got to do that shit, and it's going to be so fun for you.
And it will. And you'll also love selling soap and other fun things on your Etsy to keep your family afloat. And you cannot complain about this labor. That is a requirement. You have to have the pristine feminine energy radiating at all times, especially if you create content.
Absolutely.
If you create content and you do not portray this, you're a failure. I'm sorry.
You blew it. And
you blew it.
The thing that strikes me about this, too, all of this stuff, and I guess this is a very pat observation, but still, all of these things are simply grounded in portrayals of a good wife that we have seen in American media as long as mass media has been in existence. Whether you're talking like advertisement in magazines, stuff in movies, whatever, this is just repackaging old narratives in a new veneer, all for the purpose of bringing more children into the world. And it's impossible. It's so clearly impossible, to the point that it's like mind-numbingly obvious. You look at this shit and it's like, of course you can't do these things. Nobody can do these things. Even the most dedicated TradWife, right, who genuinely loves it, would not be able to do all four of these things reliably.
No, definitely not. And that's why if you go into a lot of these TradWife communities, you'll find people talk about how they just like couldn't do it anymore. Their husband lost their job, economic downturn. Things just got a little too hard. So the wife had to go back and get a job, or she had to do something that wasn't in line with this lifestyle. You can find dozens of these stories.
Or even worse, the family falls apart, right?
That's, oh my God, yeah.
And that's another thing that I think about too, is like, as difficult as it would be to like be in this lifestyle and then sort of have to discover getting a job like from first principles.
Yeah.
The even worse outcome would be you've got these like, I don't know, fucking 8 kids, and now the family is just totally shattered, and you may or may not actually get divorced, but nevertheless, the home is no longer a home, you know?
Right. It becomes a much worse environment, and you just have to do everything to just keep each other and all of your children afloat.
But hey, at least we pumped the kids out, so, you know.
Yeah, the birth rate, oh my God, maybe there's a couple more white kids out there. And of course, all at the end of all of this, it's TradWife, whether the woman chooses it or not, which a lot of the times they do. It is just, it all goes to serve a patriarchal look into where conservatives and the anti-feminist movement wants to bring society back to, which is the most nefarious part of all of this, is that some people are choosing to do this thing that reinforces this political ideology of loss of rights.
Well, I'm seeing this in the notes here. Like your argument is basically that like this is the red pill, but for women. Like with men, you have red pill discourse where it's like, you know, take the red pill, become the manly man, throw away like liberal values. Why do you think that it is this essentially the same thing, but on the woman's side?
I mean, that's what the conservative far right movement has been for a while now, is it's all centered within gender politics. So of course, like the right is going to be, like Andrew Tate type people. It's going to be like, you have to like get fit, you have to lift weights, you have to be a provider, you have to make money, you have to get on that grind, because that portrays the very classic type of man,
right?
Like the trad man, the trad husband. So this is the other side of that.
But it also sort of isn't, right? Because like with Andrew Tate, it's not just that demonstrating traditional masculinity. It's also about like raping women, you know?
Oh, God,
and I guess that does in a way fit into a certain conception of traditional masculinity.
Yeah.
But I think that this is an ideology that promotes like standing by your man and the traditional nuclear family.
Yes.
I guess there are baked in assumptions though about like if there is like domestic violence, it should just go unquestioned, right? Because the man is in control.
The wife is supposed to submit to the man, so he is the head of the house, absolutely. And part of what that does is, and what all of this does, this red pill for women, is it reinforces these traditional gender roles that oppress women and make them maybe not think there's anything wrong with abuse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just taken for granted. Like,
it is.
Is it abuse, or is it just sometimes my husband is angry and he lashes out and I just have to take the blows because that's what God expects of me? Sometimes my husband goes out and I know that he's like with another woman, but at the end of the day, my role is not to question his choices. My role is to preserve a comfortable home environment for him to come home to.
And then spoil him when he gets back.
Exactly.
And serve him, essentially. It takes a lot of agency away from women and gives a lot more power. It really serves to give power to men. Yeah.
God, that's fucking depressing. I feel like every episode just ends on this.
Well, at least you know what kind of man you are now.
That's
Like,
true.
I feel like that's like a good takeaway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Josh, tell me what have you learned about the trad community today?
Well, I've learned that I'm cusping on hero, which is exciting news for a guy like me.
Huge. Absolutely huge.
I'm gonna get there. But I think I've also learned that there's simultaneously more and less to this movement than I thought, right?
Yeah.
I think that much like you, I originally saw this as just like sort of a Pinsta thing. Well, it kind of is, right? It's like that. It's like between Pinterest and Instagram.
It's all
like,
aesthetic, yeah.
I
keep going back to it's all aesthetic, yeah.
Which it is. But it's an aesthetic with a political core inside of it that is much more durable than I think I had realized. And that's the thing that I think I'm going to be taking away from this, is that I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this TradWife shit is, for a certain type of woman, very much the same kind of gateway drug to the hard right that a certain kind of, you know, dudes being dudes content is for certain young men, you know?
Absolutely. And
same old shit.
And that's why I premised pretty much a lot of what we talked about here with the Steve Bannon theory of politics is downstream of culture, because liberal women are the strongest block of like Democratic Party voters, and specifically in the United States. So they're like, how can we slowly break away at this block that traditionally does not very often go for like the far right? And this is their answer to that. This is the culture they're trying to increase. They're trying to spread this culture to influence the politics. And that is the danger. I don't think this is necessarily going away. I think a lot of like trad wifery is all kind of goofy TikTok-isms and stuff like that, but there is a thing here. There is a very dangerous thing here.
Well, I'm just going to keep on working on being a hero for the next week, and I'll let you know next week if I've gotten there, okay?
Yeah, we can reevaluate week by week.
All right, hell yeah.
I'll let you know if I feel like you've earned the title. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll see you next week, okay?
See ya.